We're preparing kids for jobs that might not even exist in 10 years, and AI is only speeding that up. So the real question shouldn't be what they know, it's whether they know how to learn. If they know how to learn, it makes them adaptable, more resilient to change, and much more employable in the future. So what happens is kids get so focused on the outcome. As long as it gets the tick, it doesn't really matter how I got there, that type of mentality. But that doesn't build their ability to actually learn, which in turn is going to allow them to adapt in the future when things change. We need to shift that thinking. The kids who thrive aren't the ones who know the most. They're the ones who know what to do when they don't know something. And that's learning mastery. It's the ability to take something you don't understand, figure it out, cement it in the brain, and actually be able to use it later. Learning follows a process. And it's really important to understand if we want to teach our kids how to learn. So if you need to, grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, and write this down. Step one is information comes in. Now that can come in the form of an explanation from a YouTube clip or from some kind of textbook stimulus, but information needs to come towards the learner. Number two is the learner needs to pay attention. They need to give focus to the information. Number three is they need to think about it. The cogs need to turn over in the mind and process that information. Number four is they need to be able to apply that information to their own context in a way that they understand it. Number five is they need to explain it. Now that can be written down in a book, that can be verbally explained to somebody else, but it needs to be in their own words. In step six, they need to be able to recall it later, an hour later, a day later, or a week later. But that retrieval process, the recall that happens at a later time, number one, it confirms the learning, but the other part of that, it cements the learning process. And the more times that that information is retrieved, the more that that learning process is cemented. If those steps aren't happening, it's not learning. It's just exposure. Let me show you what this actually looks like. Think about learning to ride a bike. First of all, the process would be explained by a parent. The learner then thinks about what they need to do and give it attention. They then apply the concepts by jumping on the bike and giving it a go. By riding on the road, riding on the dirt, turning corners, they're applying it in different ways. And then when they get off, they might tell you about how they rode their bike. The next day, they jump back on the bike and recall that information. Now compare that to reading something once or getting an answer from AI. There's lots of information coming in, but unless the learner gives it focus, thinks about it, applies the knowledge, retrieves it, and explains it, then learning doesn't occur. AI is the best learning tool we've ever had if it's used properly. And it's the best leveler we've ever had. I mean, consider it doesn't matter whether someone lives regionally, it doesn't matter about their income, whether they have access to resources. If you have access to AI, you can learn anything. If AI is used well, it supports the process. If it's used poorly, it skips the thinking process and therefore the learning process. Most parents, without realizing it, are focused on the outcome. There's a story about a farmer who's chasing his cows all day. Someone says to him, "Why don't you build a fence?" He replies, "I'm too busy chasing the cows." And that's what we're doing, chasing results instead of building how kids learn. So what can you as a parent actually do? Number one is guide that learning process. When you're at home and you're teaching them a new skill or a new concept, if you have that step-by-step process in your mind, that will reinforce the learning process so that when they learn something themselves in the future, if they follow those steps, that will help them learn and build confidence to be able to do so. Don't give them a fish, teach them to fish. Number two is get them to explain it back to you. You can be the part of that learning process that prompts the recall and retrieval of information and cements the wire of learning. So in the car ride home or at the dinner table, prompt in a way that gives your child confidence to be able to attempt to explain what they learned. It doesn't matter whether it's right or it's wrong, but just give them time and try to build their confidence. Don't let it turn into your lecture. It's about their learning. Number 3, reward the process. Praise how they learned, not necessarily just the result. Number 4, don't steal the struggle. When your child is thinking about something and they're working through something and all they want is the answer, resist the urge to give it to them directly, and instead, if they need to, give them hints. But don't be afraid to give them some time to struggle through that process and make them solve the problem. When they solve the problem, they're thinking. When they're thinking, they're learning. Don't steal the struggle. Number 5 is encourage curiosity. If they're interested in something or want to know something, encourage them to go. Encourage them to figure things out. When they're figuring things out that's relevant to them, they're much more likely to be motivated. They're going to have to learn new things, potentially solve problems, and that's where real learning happens. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a structured situation because kids love to learn. Everyone loves to learn. Remember when they learned to write or learn how to ride a bike? That genuine excitement on their face, it is there. And it's an innate thing within humans to love learning. Somewhere along the line, it gets lost when we make it boring. So stimulate that curiosity and let their brain run wild, because that's where they'll have fun and that's where they'll learn. Number 6 is use AI properly. The easiest way to do that for a learning process is to, whatever AI platform they're using, encourage them to click on the tool that says study and learn. It'll be something like this, but what it does is it sends the output to a structure that follows that learning process, rather than just giving large amounts of information. So if you put the study and learn tool on, use it in a proper way to think and to apply that information, they're much more likely to learn. And the beauty of AI is that they can learn anything. Encourage that. Everyone's worried about AI taking jobs. And the unfortunate reality is it will. It already has, and that's only going to speed up. But the kids who know how to learn will always be ahead because they'll be adaptable and they'll be able to change as the landscape changes. Knowledge was once the pinnacle asset, but it's now had a shift with the influence of AI. It's more about how someone can learn. And this is the thing that I recommend that you encourage in your kids, is learn how to learn. I'm Cal from Vivco Ed. Tech will change, human capability wins. Let's go.